for my advanced production people, I want to talk to you about a few things too. Okay, and like I said, please don't judge mine too harshly. I pulled one of those things that I feel like everybody has pulled at some point in their life. Oh, I'm gonna work on this more at home, and I'm gonna get so much done. And I did not. I threw together a bunch of really bad images in no particular composition yet. But I want to show you a few things. I know most of you have cut your head apart. You've kind of started putting things together already. But I want to show you a few things that I think might also be helpful, or just some things that I would recommend you keep in mind. So I tried to go with this Stranger Things motif here. I'm going to turn off a lot. I very crudely cut out this character not super well, but let's talk about a couple of things. So, a lot of you are hand drawing a bunch of stuff, and this isn't quite as relevant to you. But if you are taking things off the internet picture wise and you want to quickly cut them out, I don't want you to forget that underneath the Magic Wand tool, there's a very helpful tool called the Object Selection tool. Okay, and it will select things for you. So, like for instance, I'm just gonna throw this away really quick. Here's this original picture. Okay, and I can use the object selection super quickly to kind of draw a general box over what I want to cut out. It'll usually try and assume what you want to cut out anyway. And even if it doesn't do a perfect job, so I know most of you know how to use this tool. I don't want you to forget that you can go up to the very top on the options bar when you are using this tool and hit select and mask, and it'll bring you into this little pop-up. In here, you could choose how you view it. I like to view the overlay so I can kind of clearly see what's cut out and what's not, but you can change it. By default, I think it's typically just set to onion skin maybe, or running ants. But in here, if you have somebody that has a lot of hair, like this particular character, I can hit this refine hair button at the top, and it's going to try and find the strands of hair. Doesn't always do an amazing job, but it will try to. Okay, I can also use these tools over here on the left. There's one that for some reason the symbol they chose is a hand that is holding the bristles of a paintbrush, which seems counterproductive in every way. But it's called the Refine Edge Brush tool. Okay, and this one, if you do start to paint over things, especially like hair, or if you have like fringe or things that are tiny little details, it takes a little time and a little patience, but it will start to cut those things out. And you could choose at the top to either add them to the mask with the plus sign or use the minus. And I know most of you, just like walking around and seeing what you've got so far, you seem to be doing fine with masks. But if your mask is giving you trouble, if you're trying to make it work and it's not doing what you want, let me know and we can definitely try to adjust whatever you need adjusted. Okay. Let's see. So let's talk about actually slicing the head, though. Okay, and again, I know quite a few of you, you've already sliced your head. Awesome. Okay, when you do slice your head, I do recommend that we try and make it look like there is actually a hollow inside or some kind of inside to the head. Okay, even if it looks cartoon style, even if it looks, not realistic, that's totally fine. I do recommend that you kind of have something in there. For the sake of time, so I don't talk to you the whole block when you need to be getting stuff done, there is a link on your particular canvas to a little video where somebody's doing basically this project, and it's pretty short. I just kind of want to show you so you can see in quick time like what they did in particular. So I'm going to rewind this back a little bit. They masked their person. I'm going to start this. Maybe move it forward just a tad. Okay. So they masked out their person, and as they decide where they want to slice the head, they use the pen tool. Okay. And I do recommend you use the pen tool too. You could use the polygonal lasso, you could use the eraser, or just the paintbrush to make a mask. But the pen tool is very friendly at letting you adjust every single point, just like you see them doing there. And most of you are really good at Illustrator and you're used to using the pen tool in there. It's the same type of functionality. So you can quickly adjust whether you want a really like sharp line or you want curved lines. But I would recommend making that a mask as well. And that's what they just did. They made their shape. They created a mask, copied that layer. Okay. And the next thing that I want to show you is I do recommend making an inside to your head, whatever the opening is. So they cut out all the hair and they make this lady bald. But once you do have your shape, they use the pen tool again to just kind of create this general hollow shape that they imagine would be there. And they don't draw like guts or anything super detailed. They just fill that shape in with a solid color at first. So let me speed that up just a bit. Okay, so they do this first, then they add a little black in there to give it a little bit more depth. Very slowly getting there. There we go. And then they even went as far as to add a little bit of red. I recommend use a gradient. So when you make your shape, put a gradient in there so it seems like it has a little bit of shading without you having to do anything special at all. But it just gives it a sense that there is something hollow in there, even if you end up filling up the majority of your head or that space that you've cut away. Another thing I do recommend, a lot of you, your pictures have shoulders and necks and things like that, stuff that was in the original background. Sometimes those are more distracting than helpful to your overall composition. Like in this particular instance right here, they cut off all the shirt and stuff like that because it was distracting in their original photo. I would recommend think about getting rid of any little thing you feel like you don't need. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes you don't want 100 different little things. Like right now, if I were to turn all this back on, I've probably got way too many little things floating around that I would need to go through and kind of eliminate out eventually because it's just too much. But for now, for the sake of showing you a couple of things, I'm going to leave all that floating there. Okay. So do make an opening for the head that clearly looks like it's hollow in some way. I do want you to really think about how you organize your elements. Okay. So like, look at mine right now. It's not looking good like that. Don't do yours like this. Think about how your things fall outside of your head when you do slice it open. It doesn't all have to be coming out of the head. You can have things that are floating around in space. You can have things that are coming out of other parts of the body if you have like arms or things of that nature. But think about how you rotate them, how you stack them on top of one another. And here's one big thing that I want to recommend. And again, I know a lot of you are drawing yours, so you have more control over this than people that are using a lot of photos. But one simple thing that makes stuff look fake and like a collage is simply the lighting. Okay. When your photos and things have different lighting, they have different types of lighting going on, it automatically just makes them look fake. Okay. That's the same thing anytime you see VFX in a movie. If they add in a creature in the movie and the lighting is not the same on the creature as in the room, it just immediately doesn't look as good. Okay, in this particular instance, I picked out tons of photos that have different lighting. Some of them have crazy colored lighting, like these characters up here. And some of them are just darker or lighter overall because that's how the shot was made. So I want to show you how to adjust that a little bit so you can kind of control an evenness between your photos. So like take for instance, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so take for instance, if I focus up here kind of at the top. I've got these three characters. There's a lot of dark shadows, a lot of dark areas. I've got these characters. Okay, they're kind of dark. They're darker than, say, this head and this head. Okay, but what you can easily do is you can click on an element. So I'm going to click on this head right here. I'm going to go up to image at the very top. I'm going to choose adjustments, and I'm going to choose levels. Okay, and levels has to do with the lightness and darkness in your picture. So when levels comes up, you have this little histogram here that should mean absolutely nothing to you, really. But there are three little sliders underneath. There's one for white, there's one for medium gray, and there's one for black. So this picture over here is considerably lighter overall than the others around it. I can take the black slider and add a little bit more black to that photo. And if it starts to get too dark overall, I can adjust the medium gray and kind of start to kind of pick that out. If I feel like it needs a little more white brought back in, I can do that. And see, already, it feels I messed it up a little bit. You can hold down Alt and hit reset instead of cancel. But automatically it feels like those are a little bit more similar than they were before, even though this has a lot of blue and a lot of red. And I'll show you how to do something like that here in a second. So again, that was just levels. So you can do that with levels. Okay, another thing that you can do is you can adjust color overall. Okay, so like this one here, okay, this girl Max, or what, that's her name, I think, Max, yeah. Um, all of her is overlaid with red lighting from this particular scene. And if I wanted to go in and adjust the color just to make it look like it's slightly different, because sometimes you're going to get things that are more blue or more yellow. Okay, like actually, I'll zoom in on this really quick right here. So this particular right here, this picture, if you look at like the white of the outfit, it's overall pretty bluish green. If I click on this picture and I go up to image at the top, I can go to adjustments and I can do a couple of different things. I can choose hue, which means color / saturation, and I can try and adjust the hue slider to make different colors more prominent. I can try and turn the saturation down, which will eventually fade the color out until it's black and white. Or if you just kind of want to slightly make a very little adjustment, you can go up to image, adjustments, and you can choose color balance. Okay. Right now, this color balance looks too blue, too green. I can slide it toward the reds. And you see how it's slowly going to start to kind of clear some of those blues out. It's not super harsh. It's not doing anything super dramatic, but it automatically isn't quite as blue as it was before. And everything takes just a little bit of, playing around and adjusting until you get it right. But that's something that you can easily do with the photos to make them just seem like they're more cohesive, even though you grab them from different places online. Okay. What else? I would consider, same as I mentioned to the two-dimensional design group. Okay. Think about using different blending modes. Maybe some of your layers don't need to be really prominent. Maybe it would be nice for them to be more subtle or kind of hidden in the background. And you can choose to do other types of blending modes on top based on whatever you kind of want to add to the picture or to the space. So try blending modes, even on solid colors. You can also, this is another thing I just mentioned to them, you can also add in basic textures and things like that. So in particular, in the original slideshow that we looked at with these different characters, Matt Cunningham is one that uses a lot of sort of vintage looking things. Even if your photos aren't vintage to begin with, if you do Google, say, vintage textures, and you grab different things that sort of look like this or like paper textures, things like that, and you bring them in, or even if you pick ones that are just different types of lighting, like a lot of the photos that I was using have a lot of blue and red. If I were to grab this texture that has a lot of blue and red, okay, I can set a blending mode to it and just kind of play with how it affects the things that it sits on top of. Okay, maybe I just want to do like a little bit of color and I could turn the opacity down, but it just gives a little bit of an essence to it that it didn't have before. You could try all kinds of different things like that just to give it a little bit of texture. But remember, you can turn that opacity down too. It doesn't have to look like a really badly filtered photo. Okay. What other things should I suggest? Okay, one last thing. Okay. I would recommend using your drop shadows too. Another thing that will make stuff just look like it is actually really together and not pasted on a piece of paper are adding drop shadows. And drop shadows are really easy to add. So say I want to add one of this big head right here. Okay. On this big head, if I double click on the layers, so I'm just going to double click on the gray part, it'll give you the different layer styles. And in here, at the very bottom, I can choose drop shadow. And I could play with the settings until I get something that kind of looks the way I want it to look. But consider adding these drop shadows. And once you make one, you can individually adjust each one, but it will copy the same settings across the board unless you change them. And sometimes it's really nice because that will just allow everything to have the same type of shadow. There we go. But just play with that sort of thing. Okay, it'll make things feel like they're more grounded together. Anybody in advanced production have any immediate questions? All right. I know most of you seem like you're okay. If you do have a question about how to do something, just let me know.